Welcome back to the Willadelphia show, everybody. The Eagles have finally found their new offensive coordinator. What to know about the new play caller in Philly? Then, is Joel Embiid back? And what should the 76ers do with their star big man? And finally, the Dave Dombrowski offseason from hell rolls on. Man, it's good to see all of you again. I'm Will Barbera, and thanks for tuning in one more time. We got a whole lot to talk about today, so let's just dig right in. We can't waste any more time. It took 16 days and over 17 interviews with different candidates, but the Philadelphia Eagles have found their new offensive coordinator. ESPN's Adam Schefter reported on Thursday that the Birds are hiring former Green Bay Packers quarterback coach Sean Mannion as their next offensive coordinator. Mannion was interviewed twice for the position before the Eagles pulled the trigger on hiring him. Mannion is a former NFL quarterback who spent the last 2 seasons working under Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. He has never called plays in the NFL before, but clearly the Eagles' top brass liked the philosophy he brought to the table. Now, is this ideal? No, not really. But I do think that this was the best of the remaining candidates. This was the best option that they had available to them. At first, I wanted one of the big names. I wanted Mike McDaniel. I wanted Brian Daboll. I wanted Cliff Kingsbury, one of those guys. But once it became clear that the Eagles weren't going to be able to get one of the big fish in the pond, I started to realize that there were not many other candidates on the market that had legitimate experience calling plays in the NFL. And that was when I realized that they were going to pivot to a candidate like this. And if you look back at the way that Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie have handled previous coaching searches, this is kind of their MO. They love to hire unproven coaches that have no track record coming in. Did anybody know who Nick Sirianni was before the Eagles made him their head coach? No, not at all. Was Doug Peterson a burgeoning head coach candidate before the Eagles hired him? No. Did Chip Kelly have any NFL coaching experience when he was hired? No, not all three, right? So this is what they do. They go on extensive searches that enrage the fan base. They interview every big name candidate, only to let them walk, and then they hire the guy that'll do the one thing that Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie value the most. And that's say yes whenever they're asked to say yes. How do you think that a clown like Nick Sirianni has kept his job for 5 years despite the fact that everyone in the NFL has no idea what value he even brings to the team? And you might be asking yourself, what makes these guys more likely to be yes men to the top brass than guys like McDaniel and Daboll? One word, 4 syllables, experience. Do you think for 1 second that Sean Mannion is going to look at Jeffrey Lurie and say, hey, boss, I don't think we ought to do it that way? No. You know why? He's only had 2 years of NFL coaching experience. Do you think that he's going to risk those 2 years up against an NFL owner like Jeffrey Lurie? He's scared silly that they're going to fire him and they put him in purgatory just like they did with Kevin Patullo. That's why we hired this guy. And I understand. The Eagles' offensive coordinator role is the ultimate make or break your career offensive coordinator job. It is. It can start a burgeoning head coaching career like it did for both Shane Steichen and Kellen Moore, or it can lead to an Icarus-like fall from grace the way it did for Brian Johnson and now Kevin Patullo. And another little thing that pisses me off, I thought this was hilarious that people were trying to spin this narrative that the Eagles' offensive coordinator job was unappealing to candidates. Really? It's unappealing to work with 2 1,000-yard wide receivers, the most talented running back in football, a Super Bowl and All-Pro caliber quarterback, one of the most proven and consistent offensive line units in the NFL, who are led by arguably the best position coach in football in Jeff Stoutland. That's unappealing? The idea that all of that is somehow unappealing to an NFL coordinator because a couple of teenagers egg Kevin Patullo's house is ridiculous. It's soft. That's what it is. And if anything, I think these candidates in the coaching carousel were afraid of being held to a standard. They weren't afraid. It's not unappealing to work with all these pieces. They're afraid of being held to a standard. Eagles fans are smart. Everybody knows Eagles fans are smart. We are all aware that Howie Roseman has put an elite roster on the field that is more than capable of winning a Super Bowl. We saw it happen. So when the team underperforms consistently the way they did last season, it's hard to just pin it on the players. Now, of course the players deserve a lot of the blame. I'm not saying that they don't. But when the regression is that drastic, a deeper-seated issue rears its ugly head. And that's why Kevin Patullo is going to be off selling hot dogs at the Link or whatever the hell they're going to have him doing next year. Because the Packers ran a much more complex offense than the Eagles did last season. And Mannion was a big part of that. You're a quarterback coach. You have a big part of that offense. So say what you will about Matt LaFleur, but he makes Kevin Patullo and, quite frankly, Nick Sirianni look like a JV coach when it comes to calling offensive plays. If Mannion can be anywhere close to LaFleur, this will be a huge upgrade for the Eagles offense. And earlier this morning, the Eagles announced that they are also signing former Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator Josh Grizzard as their passing game coordinator. And Eagles fans should be hype about that, because this is a guy that likes to take shots down the field, okay? Everybody that was complaining about how the Eagles passing game couldn't get going, that's why the Eagles brought this guy in, okay? So Grizzard also did interview for the Eagles offensive coordinator job before they ended up hiring Mannion. So it seems like they liked both of them. They brought both of them in, and I like that. And then I like that they are trying to address the offense that much that they're like, listen, both of these guys want to be here, and we can get both of them. Let's not squander this. So I like that they brought both of them in. And neither of them are big names or flashy additions to the coaching staff, but they are absolutely still an upgrade from what the Eagles had last season. And if they somehow are worse or the same as what we saw with Patullo, there could be some serious repercussions. And I'm talking by Sirianni repercussions, okay? I like that the Eagles brought in two new names to try to fix the offense. I don't care what anybody else says. Now we wait and we see what they do from here. So with that being said, we're going to pivot to a little 76ers basketball. We're going to talk about some Joel Embiid. The 76ers big man has done what I once thought to be impossible. He turned into an effective piece of the team again. His newfound health has led a resurgence in production. On the season, he's averaging 25.7 points and 7-point rebounds on 49% shooting from the field in a little under 31 minutes a game on the season. And he has really caught fire over the past 6 games, putting up 33, 30, 32, 38, 29, and 37 points in those games respectively. Performances like those have people in Philly excited about what's to come down the stretch this season, but not this guy. Not old Willie B. People have such short memories in this city all of a sudden, and that ain't how it used to be. I talked to my dad, my grandpa, they have steel traps for memories. Every single piece of harm and heartbreak that they've experienced in Philadelphia sports throughout their entire lives is stored deep inside, and they'll never let go of it. That ain't how it is now. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The Philadelphia 76ers have put me through more heartbreak than any man, woman, or child could ever dream of putting me through. All I ever expect from them is heartbreak, and that is all I will ever expect from them until I am proven wrong. Just a few months ago, I was telling people that the Philadelphia 76ers have one of the worst futures of any team in basketball because we have almost $300 million invested through 2028 into a center that can't stay healthy enough to help the team win. And even when he is healthy, he'll never play back-to-back games again for the rest of his career. Throw in the fact that we are also paying Paul George another $212 million over 4 years, and you have found yourself in what we call cap hell with no way out, okay? You can't trade either contract because no team would take that much money for a player that has a proven track record of not being able to stay on the floor. Many people, including myself, were begging the Sixers to either trade him for a tire iron or just to release him and eat the money so that the team could finally move on and not be hindered by his presence. And somehow, by the grace of a higher power, that has changed this season in a remarkably quick period of time. Embiid looks like his old self for barely long enough to think it's even sustainable, and people are no longer interested in trading him. Ike Reese on WIP the other day said that Joel has earned the right to finish his career in Philadelphia. Look, I love Joel Embiid. He's been my favorite player on my favorite team for a long time. That's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard, okay? For the first time in years, Joel Embiid might actually be worth something to the 76ers as a trade asset. And what? Now it's no longer worth it? Because of a 6-game stretch of dominance before we even get to the NBA All-Star break, we're going to act like the last 6 years of injury-prone basketball didn't happen? We may finally have an out of the Joel Embiid situation, and people are letting their love for Joel as a person get in the way of what is best for the Philadelphia 76ers. I think the Sixers would be stupid not to shop him around. If they can get a team that is willing to take on a quarter of his contract, it would be worth it. The 76ers currently sit at 26-21, or the number 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. That's not a team that's good enough to go all in on, in my opinion. It just isn't. And yet I see people on Twitter talking about trading VJ Edgecombe and draft picks to the Milwaukee Bucks for Giannis Antetokounmpo so that he can be paired with Joel Embiid. You guys are insane. You guys have like Stockholm Syndrome or something. I've never seen this before. VJ Edgecombe is one of the most freak athletes I've ever seen don a 76ers uniform. I think this guy could be like a prime Dwayne Wade in a couple of years, once he adds some polish to his game and maybe a little bit of muscle. Do you think for 1 second that the Milwaukee Bucks would be interested in trading arguably the greatest player in their franchise's history to an Eastern Conference rival that didn't include a player with that much upside? They are going to ask for Edgecombe. And the fact that Sixers fans are ready to give him up shows an allegiance to Embiid over the new guard of VJ and Maxey. Trading Edgecombe in a package for Giannis is the ultimate pushing the chips to the center of the table on this season move. And either way, I think that's ridiculous. I think the best case scenario of an Embiid-Giannis pairing is an Eastern Conference Finals exit this season. Worst case scenario is we trade away our future to win now, we lose in the playoffs, can't afford to re-sign Giannis, so now we are left with no foundation or picks to build on in the future. Adding Giannis doesn't just magically make the rest of this team championship quality. But trading Joel Embiid and using the money we offload to add talent over the next few seasons might actually make us a championship contender. Daryl Morey's plan will become clear to us in due time. That ends our segment on the Philadelphia 76ers and Joel Embiid. Now, I'm just going to finish off the show by talking, basically just ranting about the Phillies offseason again, because it just gets worse and worse and worse. If any of you guys watched my State of the Phillies offseason podcast, I laid out several alternative plans for the Phillies to target this offseason that could put them in a position to at least compete with the Dodgers in 2026. I said the Phillies should make a play for Kyle Tucker or Alex Bregman. They signed with the Dodgers and Cubs, respectively. I said the Phillies should go hard after Bo Bichette. And granted, they tried to, but they ultimately let him get poached by the Mets for $42 million a year. I said that they should try and trade for Ryan Jeffers on the Minnesota Twins and let JT Realmuto walk so that they could get younger at the catcher position. Once Bichette signed with the Mets, they panicked and gave Realmuto a 3-year, $45 million overpay to stay in Philly. But the one thing I talked about multiple times in that video was that the bare minimum that Dave Dombrowski could do to prove that he is at least serious about not regressing from last season was bringing back Harrison Bader after all the success he had with the team after the trade deadline. And then last week, Harrison Bader signed with the San Francisco Giants on a 2-year, $21 million deal. Now, the Phillies traded Matt Strahm to offload money earlier this offseason. They got a discount on re-signing JT compared to what his last contract was, even though I still consider it to be an overpay, all in all. And they have all but guaranteed that Nick Castellanos will be dumped this offseason to free up cap space. The Phillies were ready to offer Bo Bichette a 7-year, $200 million contract before he signed with New York. And you mean to look me in my face and tell me the Phillies couldn't afford to bring back Harrison Bader for $10.5 million a season? That, more than anything else that has happened this offseason, is a slap in the face to Phillies fans. Here's a guy who came in at the trade deadline, played elite defense in the outfield, hit .305 with solid production in a platoon role, and clearly meshed very well with the team. And Dave Dombrowski didn't see any of that as a good reason to bring him back for this season. And some people out here might be going, well, what if the Phillies offered him and he decided to walk for another team? When Bader arrived in San Fran, he took questions from reporters at the airport as soon as he touched down. And one of those brave souls looked him in the face and asked, how come you chose not to re-sign with the Phillies? And you know what his answer was? Quote, why I'm not with them, I don't know. is like that. That's just unacceptable, in my opinion. Does that sound like a guy who chose not to be here? Or does that sound like a guy who felt like the Phillies didn't value him enough to bring him back? I think there is one word that perfectly sums up the Phillies' 2025-26 offseason. Content. The Phillies are content with what they have. The Phillies are content with not being as good as the Dodgers. The Phillies are content with maybe not even being the best team in their division in 2026. The Mets have been making moves all offseason now. Whether they have gotten better, that we could debate about that. But after the moves they've made, the Phillies would be foolish to overlook them. Listen, I'd rather be a Phillies fan than a Mets fan 7 days a week and twice on Sundays. It sure would be nice, though, to have an owner and general manager that at least want the fans to know that they're doing everything they can to improve and compete with a team like the Dodgers. Dave Dombrowski should take a page out of their book. He really should. If the Phillies make another move, one more move this offseason, I'll be shocked, because they are content with being a bridesmaid for the long haul. How disappointing. That is our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Willadelphia Show. How do you feel about the Eagles' hires of Sean Mannion and Josh Grizzard? Should the 76ers trade Joel Embiid or go all in on a trade for Giannis? And do you think the Phillies will actually be good enough to compete with the Dodgers in 2026? Let me know all of that and more down in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe to Willadelphia Sports and to follow us on social media. I'm out of here. Go Birds and Kabooyah.